is first just look at the story and see what different sections already exist within the story. And you can decide for yourself where these sections make the most sense. For example, the sections that my mom chose for her to help her remember the story were different than the ones that I chose to help me remember the story. So what were the sections you chose?
Mine was Beautiful Gate,
Beautiful Gate,
and then Jesus Glorified,
Jesus Glorified,
and then Faith.
Faith. Okay, so that's different because for me, first, I split the story into 3 sections, and the 3 sections that made sense to me, to help me remember the story, were meeting, miracle, and message, which already, if I don't add extra words to these sections, because these were words that made sense to me, I can tell you a really basic version of the story just from those 3 words. Because Peter and John were at the temple and they met a beggar who couldn't walk and he was being carried in, and all the people there knew that this person, for their entire lives, was the person who sat at the gate and begged for money because he couldn't walk. But Peter and John performed a miracle, and they ended up healing the man so that he could walk again. But then they gave the message of Christ. They said, this is not from our own power, this is from the power of Christ. And they told about Jesus, and they told the people in the temple how they had rejected Jesus and they had had him killed on the cross, and they preached the good news of the gospel to them through this miracle. So a very simple version. I skipped a lot of the details from that story, but you can see already how I'm able to remember a much larger story from just a few simple words. Then if we want to start making sure that we remember other details in the story, for each section, we can add a couple more words to help us remember those details of the story. For example, my first word that I chose was pray, because Peter and John were going to the temple to pray at 3 in the afternoon. Beautiful. And they were arriving at the gate that was called Beautiful. But then they saw a beggar, and the beggar was being carried in by other people. And he was being carried in because he couldn't walk. And everyone in the temple knew that this was a person who for their entire lives had sat there at the beautiful gate asking for money because he couldn't walk. Then the beggar saw Peter and John, and he asked them for money. He asked them to give money to him. But then Peter looked at him and he said, "Look at me." And the beggar looked at him and he looked closely because he was expecting that hopefully Peter was going to give him money. Now, that's when I would transition to the miracle portion of the story, but I didn't create the words for this section because now we're going to switch over to having you guys open up your Bibles to Acts 3, 1 through 16, and you're going to create your own word outline for this story in a way that makes sense to you so that you can remember the story. And we're going to take a couple minutes for this, and after we come back together, we're going to have a couple volunteers come up, and you're going to use your word outline. You can have it up here with you, and you're going to tell us the story in Acts 3, 1 through 16, using your word outline to help you remember. Now on this, I want to give you a reminder that Hensel gave us at the very beginning. As teachers, if we're expecting our students to do something, we have to do it double. We have to give double the energy. So when we reconvene in a moment, you're going to have to be brave. You're going to have to volunteer to come up and tell the story with the outline you made. Because if we're going to expect our students to do that, to make an outline of the Bible stories and to come tell the Bible stories in front of others, then we have to be willing to do it ourselves.